First contact in the deep. Dr. Sarah Chen had always thought humanity's first contact with alien life would come from the stars above. Instead, she found herself staring at something decidedly alien through the reinforced viewport of the DSV Nautilus, 11 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean's surface. "That's definitely not a geological formation," she muttered, adjusting the external lights to better illuminate the object, partially buried in the sediment of the Challenger Deep. The structure's metallic surface reflected their lights with an iridescent sheen that no Earth material could replicate. "Control, are you seeing this?" Sarah's voice was steady despite her racing heart. The Nautilus was humanity's most advanced deep-sea research vessel, designed to study life in the most extreme environments on Earth. Today, it might have found something far more significant. "Affirmative, Doctor. All feeds are clear," came the response from the surface support ship 11 kilometers above. "Initial analysis suggests artificial construction. Origin unknown." Sarah's colleague, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, was already running scans from his station. "Material composition doesn't match anything in our database. The structure appears to be powered. There's a faint energy signature emanating from within." The object was roughly cylindrical, approximately 20 meters in length, with what appeared to be sealed doorways along its sides. What caught Sarah's attention most was how clean it looked. No coral growth, no sediment accumulation, despite clearly having been here for some time. "Pressure readings?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. They were in the deepest point on Earth, after all. "Holding steady at 1,086 bars, Marcus confirmed. "Whatever this thing is, it's built to handle the crush depth." The Nautilus continued its careful approach, its array of sensors gathering data about their discovery. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The structure's smooth surface held no visible windows, but something about its positioning seemed deliberate. A sudden ping from their communications array startled them both. "We're picking up a signal," Marcus announced, his fingers flying over his console. It's coming from the structure." Before Sarah could respond, their external lights flickered, and a beam of energy emerged from the alien structure, scanning the Nautilus from bow to stern. The vessel's systems remained stable. Whatever it was, it wasn't hostile. "Signal is repeating," Marcus reported. Wait, this can't be right. It's switching to radio waves. We're receiving a transmission." The message that came through their speakers was unlike anything they had expected. It wasn't the mathematical sequences scientists had long theorized would be the universal language of first contact, nor was it an incomprehensible alien tongue. It was English. "Human vessel detected in exclusion zone. Impossible parameters confirmed. Emergency protocols activated." Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. "Exclusion zone?" Sarah wondered aloud. The structure's surface suddenly shifted, panels sliding away to reveal more complex machinery beneath. Light began to pulse from within its core, and their sensors detected a massive energy buildup. "Control, are you seeing this?" Sarah called up to the surface. "We need tow." She was cut off by another transmission, this one broadcast with such power that it made their communications system crackle. "Warning to all Council vessels. Human biological entities detected at crush depth. Repeat. Class 10 environmental resistance confirmed. Species capability exceeds theoretical limits. Quarantine protocols initiated." The structure's energy signature continued to spike, and Sarah realized with growing alarm that it was some kind of beacon or transmission device. "Back us off," she ordered, but before Marcus could comply, the alien device pulsed once more. The water around them literally vibrated with the power of its broadcast, and this time, the message was different. "Emergency alert to all Council species. Humans have achieved deep-sea penetration capabilities. Biological adaptability exceeds all known parameters. They have reached the bottom. They aavreached the bottom." The panic in the artificial voice was unmistakable, And Sarah suddenly understood. This wasn't just an alien device. It was an alien warning system, and humanity had just triggered it by doing something the aliens thought was impossible, reaching the deepest point of their own ocean. "Surface, we need to evacuate immediately," Sarah commanded, but even as Marcus engaged their ascent protocols, she knew this was just the beginning. Whatever civilization had placed this device here had clearly been watching Earth, studying humanity from afar. They had assumed the crushing pressures of the deep ocean would serve as a natural barrier, keeping humans contained to the shallower waters above. They had been wrong. As the Nautilus began its ascent, the alien structure continued its transmission, broadcasting humanity's impossible achievement to whatever was listening among the stars. Sarah couldn't help but smile at the irony. Humanity's first contact with alien life had come not from reaching up to the stars, but from diving down into the depths of their own world. The structure's final message followed them up through the darkness. Update to Council Species. Revised threat assessment. Humans do not recognize impossible environments. Repeat. Humans do not recognize impossible environments. By the time they reached the surface, Sarah knew their world would never be the same. Humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy not with a message of peace or a demonstration of advanced technology, but by simply surviving in an environment that advanced alien civilizations had deemed impossible for intelligent life. They had scared the stars not with weapons or threats, but with their simple, stubborn refusal to accept limitations. As the Nautilus breached the surface into sunshine, Sarah wondered what other impossible achievements humanity would demonstrate to their unseen watchers. The depth of the ocean had just become humanity's first step into a much larger universe, and they had entered it not with a bang, but with something that seemed to frighten the aliens far more. They had walked in through a door that wasn't supposed to be open to them at all. The glass cage. 3 months after the Mariana Trench incident, Dr. Sarah Chen found herself in another impossible situation. This time, she wasn't 11 kilometers under the ocean. She was standing in what appeared to be a pristine laboratory aboard an alien research vessel, separated from her captors by a transparent barrier that hummed with energy. "Please continue your normal activities," the artificial voice requested through hidden speakers. "Your habitat has been replicated to optimal specifications." Sarah exchanged glances with Dr. Marcus Rodriguez and the 3 other scientists who had been collected with them during what was supposed to be a routine follow-up expedition to the deep-sea site. The aliens had apparently decided that remote observation wasn't sufficient anymore. "Optimal specifications," Marcus muttered, examining the laboratory equipment they'd been provided. "They've recreated everything down to the coffee maker, but the gravity's off by at least 0.2 Gs. Sarah had noticed that too. Everything in their enclosure was a perfect replica of a high-end research facility, but small details were just wrong enough to be unsettling. The air had a slightly higher oxygen content than Earth normal. The lighting spectrum wasn't quite right, and their alien observers seemed fascinated by the most mundane aspects of human behavior. "They're treating us like lab rats," Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their biochemist, observed as she watched several tall, spindly aliens take notes on the other side of the barrier. Very comfortable, well-treated lab rats, but still lab rats. Sarah approached the barrier, studying their captors. The aliens were easily 3 meters tall, with bodies that seemed too fragile for their height. Their movements were careful, deliberate, as if they were afraid of breaking themselves, which, Sarah realized, they probably were. "Look at their environment," she said quietly to her colleagues. "Notice anything?" The others joined her at the barrier. Beyond their enclosure, the alien laboratory was a study in careful engineering. Every surface was cushioned. The aliens wore what appeared to be exoskeletal support frames. The gravity in their section was noticeably lower than even Earth normal. They're adapted to a low-gravity environment, Marcus realized. That's why they're so tall and thin. They'd probably evolved on a small world, maybe a moon. "Which explains their fascination with us," Yuki added. We're from a heavy world by their standards, yet we move around like it's nothing. The fourth member of their group, Dr. James Wilson, had been quiet since their capture, but now he spoke up. They're not just studying us. They're trying to figure out how we're possible. Sarah watched as one of the aliens accidentally dropped a datapad. Instead of bending to pick it up, they summoned a robotic assistant to retrieve it. They've engineered their way around their physical limitations, she mused. They probably assume all intelligent species would do the same. Instead, they find us running marathons for fun and diving to crush depths in basically a metal bubble, Marcus said with a grim smile. We must terrify them. Their observations were interrupted by the artificial voice. Attention research subjects. We will now begin physical capability assessment. Please proceed to the exercise area. A section of their enclosure had transformed into what looked like a high-end gym. The aliens were clearly expecting them to demonstrate their physical capabilities. Sarah looked at her colleagues. They want a show. Let's give them one. Over the next hour, they took turns demonstrating various exercises. What seemed routine to them appeared to horrify their observers. When Marcus did pull-ups, several aliens rushed to take readings. When Yuki demonstrated yoga poses, their observers frantically recorded her flexibility. And when Sarah started a simple jogging routine on the treadmill, the aliens seemed unable to comprehend her sustained endurance. Their data must be going crazy, James commented as he bench-pressed weights that would have crushed their observers. We're probably breaking all their models of possible biological capabilities. But Sarah had noticed something else during their impromptu performance. Subtle changes in the environmental controls of their enclosure. The gravity had increased slightly. The temperature was fluctuating. The oxygen levels were being adjusted. They're not just studying our capabilities, she realized. They're testing our adaptability. As if confirming her suspicion, the artificial voice announced, "Environmental variation test commencing. Please continue normal activities." Over the next several hours, their enclosure was subjected to a series of environmental changes that would have been lethal to their observers. The temperature swung between near freezing and sweltering. The gravity increased and decreased. The air pressure fluctuated. Through it all, the humans adapted. They put on or removed layers of clothing. They adjusted their movements to compensate for gravity changes. They unconsciously regulated their breathing under different atmospheric conditions. "Look at them," Yuki whispered, nodding toward their observers. The aliens were huddled together, their body language conveying what could only be described as shock. The testing continued for days. Each time the humans adapted to a new condition, the aliens introduced more extreme variations. They seemed unable to accept that biological organisms could function under such a wide range of conditions without technological assistance. Finally, after a particularly grueling series of tests involving rapid pressure changes, Sarah had enough. She walked directly to the barrier and addressed their observers. "We understand what you're doing," she said clearly. "You're trying to find our breaking point, our limitations. But here's what you don't understand. Humans don't accept limitations. We adapt. We endure. And right now, we're not just surviving your tests. We're learning from them." The aliens' reaction was immediate. The environmental controls stabilized, and a new voice, different from the artificial one, spoke. "Explain this statement. Learning from them." Sarah smiled. "Every test you run teaches us more about your technology, your capabilities, and your limitations. We're not just test subjects, we're scientists, and you've given us a fascinating new field of study." There was a long pause, then a flurry of activity among the aliens. The barrier suddenly became opaque, cutting off their view of the alien laboratory. The artificial voice returned. "Assessment protocols suspended. New classification required. Subjects demonstrate unprecedented analytical capabilities combined with environmental resistance. Standard containment protocols insufficient." Sarah turned to her colleagues. "I think we just changed the parameters of their experiment." "More than that," Marcus said, examining the now opaque barrier. I think we just made them realize their glass cage works both ways. They'd been so busy studying us, they didn't consider we might be studying them." As if in response to his words, the artificial voice made one final announcement. "Warning to all research stations. Human subjects display Class X observational and analytical capabilities. They are not merely adapting to tests. They are reverse engineering our methods. Recommend immediate termination of all direct study protocols." The humans exchanged knowing looks. They had just demonstrated something that apparently frightened the aliens even more than their physical capabilities: their ability to turn any situation, even captivity, into an opportunity for learning and advancement. As the alien vessel's engines hummed to life, presumably to return them to Earth, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what the aliens would make of their report. They had tried to study humanity in a controlled environment, only to discover that humans didn't just survive in the cage. They turned it into a laboratory of their own. The endurance games. The message arrived 6 months after the research vessel incident, broadcast simultaneously to every major communications center on Earth. To the species designated as human, "You have been selected to participate in the Grand Assembly's Species Capability Assessment. This is not optional. Coordinates follow." Now, Dr. Sarah Chen stood alongside Marcus Rodriguez in what appeared to be the galaxy's largest sports arena, representing Earth in what the aliens called a routine evaluation, but felt more like an elaborate cosmic game show. Teams from 30 different species filled the vast space, each group distinct in their appearance and capabilities. "Notice how they've separated everyone," Marcus whispered, gesturing to the carefully maintained buffer zones between different species. "They're treating us like we're dangerous." Sarah had noticed. While other species mingled freely in their designated areas, a clear space was maintained around the human delegation. The few aliens that did approach them wore what appeared to be protective gear, as if humanity might be contagious. "Welcome, participants," announced a resonant voice that seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. "The assessment begins. Please proceed to your designated evaluation chambers." Their evaluation chamber turned out to be a massive environmental simulation room. As Sarah and Marcus entered, they found themselves joined by representatives from 3 other species. One appeared to be made primarily of crystalline structures, another looked like a collection of floating gas clouds, and the third resembled an Earth octopus, but with significantly more tentacles. Phase 1. Environmental adaptation, the voice announced. "Your chamber will experience random environmental shifts. Maintain functional capacity as long as possible." The changes began immediately. The temperature plummeted, then soared. Gravity fluctuated wildly. The atmosphere shifted composition. The crystalline being immediately created a protective shell around itself. The gas creature compressed into a denser form. The tentacled alien produced some kind of technological shield. Sarah and Marcus simply adjusted their breathing, shifted their stance to accommodate the gravity changes, and kept moving. Their environmental suits, brought along as a precaution, remained unused. After what felt like hours, they were the only ones still standing. The other species had either withdrawn from the test or required technological assistance to continue. The humans had simply endured. "Phase 1 complete," the voice announced. "Species human demonstrates Class X environmental adaptation without technological augmentation. Updating assessment parameters." The next phase tested problem-solving abilities under stress. The chamber transformed into a series of increasingly complex puzzles that had to be solved while under various forms of pressure, both literal and figurative. "They're not just testing our solutions," Sarah realized as she and Marcus worked through a particularly challenging spatial reasoning problem, while the chamber slowly filled with an inert gas. "They're testing how we think under pressure." "Literally," Marcus agreed, his breathing measured despite the thinning atmosphere. "But they don't understand. This is what humans do best. We thrive under pressure." Their solutions weren't always the most elegant, but they were consistently effective. While other species approached problems with careful, methodical precision, The humans demonstrated what one alien observer termed alarming cognitive flexibility. Phase 2 complete, the voice announced. Species human displays unprecedented problem-solving variability. Warning: solutions frequently involve what would be considered unacceptable risk factors for civilized species. The final phase was what the aliens called extended function testing, essentially an endurance trial. The participants were required to perform various tasks continuously, without rest or technological assistance. "This is fascinating," Sarah said as they jogged through hour 6 of what appeared to be a never-ending obstacle course. "They seem to think this is some kind of extreme stress test." Marcus laughed between measured breaths. "Should we tell them about ultramarathons, or that humans used to hunt by literally chasing animals until they collapsed from exhaustion?" "I think we're demonstrating that quite effectively," Sarah replied, noting the growing crowd of alien observers. Their expressions were difficult to read, but their agitation was clear. By hour 12, they were the only participants still moving. The other species had long since withdrawn, their biological limitations or technological dependencies forcing them to stop. But the humans continued, their bodies adapted to sustained effort in a way that seemed to terrify their observers. "Emergency override," the voice suddenly announced. "Testing terminated. Species human demonstrates unprecedented sustained functionality, exceeding all known biological parameters." As the chamber powered down, Sarah and Marcus found themselves surrounded by a delegation of what appeared to be high-ranking aliens. Their translator rendered the aliens' agitated communication. "This cannot be natural. No species maintains physical function this long without rest cycles. Their problem-solving patterns show complete disregard for personal safety parameters. They adapted to 17 lethal environmental variations without technological assistance. Recommendation: immediate reclassification. They are not merely a heavy world species. This is something new." The lead alien, distinguished by its elaborate protective suit, addressed them directly. "Your species presents a classification paradox. You demonstrate capabilities that should not coexist in a natural species. Your endurance exceeds biological limits. Your problem-solving ignores self-preservation protocols. Your environmental adaptation contradicts evolutionary logic." Sarah stepped forward. "Perhaps your classification system needs updating. Humans don't just survive challenges. We actively seek them out. What you see as dangerous or impossible, we see as an opportunity to adapt and improve." The alien delegation recoiled slightly at her approach. The lead alien's next words carried a note of what might have been fear. Species assessment conclusion: humans do not recognize natural limitations. They do not respect biological constraints. They continue functioning beyond all reasonable cessation points. Classification: potential Class X evolutionary anomaly. As they were escorted from the chamber, Sarah and Marcus overheard one final exchange between the aliens. "How do we assess a species that treats survival challenges as recreational activities? More importantly, how do we contain a species that views biological limitations as optional suggestions?" The human delegation returned to Earth with a new status in the galactic community, not as an emerging civilization to be guided, but as an evolutionary anomaly to be watched with caution. They had passed the assessment, but not in any way the aliens had anticipated. As their ship prepared for the journey home, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the irony. The aliens had created their assessment to measure species' capabilities against universal standards. Instead, humanity had forced them to question those standards entirely. "You know what's really going to worry them," Marcus said as they watched the alien station recede in their viewport. "This was just 2 of us. Wait until they realize there are billions more humans back home, each one just as capable of pushing their supposedly impossible limits." Sarah nodded. "I think we just changed the game by showing them that what they consider extraordinary, we consider Tuesday morning exercise." The Void Dancers. The emergency alert reached Earth on a quiet Tuesday morning. Critical containment failure at Nexus Station. All species with vacuum survival expertise requested for immediate assistance. Warning: station contains experimental quantum anomaly. Catastrophic failure imminent. They're asking for our help, Sarah Chen asked, reading the alert for the third time. After the Endurance Games incident, most alien species had been keeping their distance from humanity. Not exactly, Marcus Rodriguez replied, already suiting up in the enhanced EVA gear they'd developed after studying alien technology. They're asking for anyone with vacuum expertise. They probably assumed we wouldn't qualify. Yet here they were 12 hours later, approaching the massive Nexus station in a hastily modified human vessel. The station was a marvel of alien engineering, a sprawling structure at the intersection of several major space lanes. Now its graceful form was marred by visible damage along one section, where the experimental quantum drive had begun to malfunction. Multiple species vessels detected in staging area, their ship's AI reported, receiving emergency protocols now. The staging area was chaos. Ships from at least 8 different species hovered at what they considered a safe distance, their crews attempting to coordinate a response. The station's outer hull was beginning to show signs of quantum distortion, reality itself seeming to blur around the affected areas. Human vessel, maintain safe distance, came a warning from what appeared to be a command ship. Your primitive shielding will not protect you from quantum effects. Sarah keyed the comm. We're not here to watch. We're here to help. There was a pause then. Your species lacks the necessary technological development for vacuum operations of this magnitude. Please withdraw to. Look at your scans again, Marcus interrupted. Our ship is already inside the quantum distortion zone. We're fine. Another pause. This is impossible. Your shields. We don't have any active shields right now, Sarah explained. We studied the quantum signature you transmitted and adjusted our hull's molecular structure to resonant frequency. Basic physics. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, a different voice came over the comm. You deliberately entered a quantum distortion field with only passive protection. We need to get closer to assess the damage, Sarah replied, ignoring the question. Request permission to approach the affected section. The aliens seemed too shocked by their casual approach to the lethal quantum field to object. As their ship drew closer, they got their first clear view of the problem. The station's quantum drive housing had fractured, creating a cascading failure that was slowly tearing apart the fabric of space-time around it. Their containment systems are too rigid, Marcus observed, studying the readings. They're trying to force the quantum field into submission instead of working with it. Sarah nodded. They're thinking like engineers instead of dancers. Dancers? In zero gravity, you can't fight physics. You have to flow with it, like dancing. She keyed the comm again. Station control, we're going EVA to attempt repairs. The response was immediate and agitated. Negative. No biological entity can survive direct exposure to. They cut off as Sarah and Marcus launched from their ship's airlock, their modified suits allowing them to move through the quantum distortion like it was nothing more than a heavy current. How are they doing this? They heard one alien observer ask over the open channel. Their suits appear to be primitive by our standards, another replied. But they're moving through the quantum field as if we understand that quantum mechanics is about probability and flow, not control and containment, Sarah finished, though only on their private channel to Marcus. They reached the damaged section, their movements fluid and precise. Years of space work had taught humans that fighting zero gravity was futile. You had to work with it, become part of it. Now they applied that same principle to the quantum distortions, letting the waves of probability guide their movements, while their carefully calculated suit modifications kept them anchored in normal space. Look at their trajectory, they heard an alien scientist exclaim. They're using the quantum fluctuations to amplify their momentum. That's basic spacewalk technique, Marcus muttered as they began their work. When you don't have fancy artificial gravity and inertial dampeners, You learn to use what you have. The repair itself was complex but straightforward. The aliens had over-engineered their containment solution, trying to force quantum certainty through technological brute force. Sarah and Marcus began removing the rigid containment structures, replacing them with a series of dynamic resonators that would work with the quantum field rather than against it. They're dismantling the containment systems. An alarmed voice called over the comm. Stop them immediately. Wait, another voice interrupted. The quantum cascade. It's stabilizing. How? Simple, Sarah replied, her hands never stopping their work. You can't control quantum mechanics. You have to adapt to it. Flow with it, guide it. Like dancing in zero gravity. For 3 hours, they worked in what the aliens considered lethal conditions. Their movements were precise yet fluid, each action calculated yet seeming almost casual. To the watching aliens, it must have looked like madness. Biological entities swimming through the quantum foam of reality itself, treating laws of physics that terrified advanced civilizations as nothing more than an interesting challenge. Finally, the quantum drive stabilized. The distortions faded, reality snapped back into its proper shape, and the crisis was over. As Sarah and Marcus returned to their ship, the alien observers were oddly quiet. How? The station's chief scientist finally asked. How did you know this would work? We didn't, Marcus replied honestly. But we understood the principles, calculated the highest probability of success, and adapted our approach as we went along. You guessed. We made an educated hypothesis and were prepared to adjust our theory based on observed results, Sarah corrected. That's how humans do science. We try things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. We learn either way. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Finally, the station's commander spoke. Update to all council records. Human species demonstrates unprecedented ability to operate in quantum uncertainty conditions. They appear to treat fundamental laws of physics as optional guidelines. As they prepared to return to Earth, Sarah and Marcus received one final transmission. Warning to all stations. Humans have now demonstrated mastery of quantum-level adaptation. They do not simply ignore environmental hazards. They actively work with them. Previous classification as environmental anomalies insufficient. New classification pending. Sarah couldn't help but laugh as their ship broke orbit. We should tell them about quantum physicists who surf in their free time. Really blow their minds. Better not, Marcus replied with a grin. They seem worried enough about our species' casual relationship with what they consider immutable laws of reality. They had come to help with a crisis and ended up demonstrating yet another aspect of humanity that terrified their alien observers, their ability to treat the most fundamental forces of the universe, not as barriers to be feared, but as partners in a cosmic dance. Symphony of survival. The galactic community had spent a year avoiding humanity after the quantum drive incident. Then the shatter wave appeared. A massive subspace distortion that consumed entire star systems, leaving behind only cosmic debris and quantum chaos. Now, the same aliens who had fled from human contact were approaching Earth with a desperate request. Let me understand this correctly, Sarah Chen said, facing the holographic representations of the Grand Assembly's Emergency Council. You want us to intentionally enter the shatter wave. Your species has demonstrated unique capabilities in quantum unstable environments. The crystalline being serving as chief coordinator replied. The wave has already consumed 3 systems. Conventional containment attempts have failed. And you think humans can help because we're too stubborn to accept that it's impossible. Marcus Rodriguez asked from his position beside Sarah. Because your species has consistently demonstrated the ability to function in conditions we consider unsurvivable, another council member corrected. Though your characterization is not entirely inaccurate. Sarah studied the data they'd provided. The shatter wave was like nothing humanity had encountered. A roiling storm of broken physics and twisted space-time that defied conventional analysis. It was beautiful, in a terrifying way. "We'll need volunteers," she said finally. "People who understand that this mission would be testing the limits of even human adaptability. You'll attempt it." The council members shifted in what might have been surprise. Despite knowing the conditions inside the wave exceed all known survival parameters, Marcus smiled. "You still don't understand humans very well, do you? Telling us something's impossible just makes us want to try it more." Within a week, they had assembled their team. 20 humans, each chosen not just for their scientific expertise, but for their ability to adapt to impossible situations. They called themselves the Void Dancers, taking their name from Sarah's description of quantum navigation during the Nexus Station crisis. Their ship, the HFY Impossible, was a hybrid of human ingenuity and alien technology, designed to surf the edge of chaos. As they approached the shatter wave, the alien fleet maintained what they considered a safe distance, nearly a light-year back. Receiving final warnings from the fleet, their communications officer reported, "They're still trying to talk us out of this." "Acknowledge their concern," Sarah replied from the command chair. "Then show them what humans do best." The Impossible didn't just enter the shatter wave. It dove into it, its hull resonating with carefully calculated frequencies that let it ride the quantum turbulence like a surfer riding a wave. Inside, the crew experienced what should have been lethal conditions. Reality itself became fluid, probability clouds replacing normal physics. But humans, it turned out, were remarkably good at functioning in uncertainty. Where alien crews would have been paralyzed by the breakdown of physical laws, the Void Dancers adapted. They learned to read the patterns in chaos, to anticipate the flow of broken physics, to dance with the impossible. "It's like jazz," Marcus commented as they penetrated deeper into the wave. "You can't fight it. You have to improvise with it." They discovered the truth about the shatter wave 3 days into their mission. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was an ancient experiment gone wrong, a failed attempt by a long-vanished civilization to rewrite the laws of physics. The wave wasn't destroying systems. It was trying to remake them according to impossible parameters. That's why conventional containment failed, Sarah realized, watching the quantum data stream across their monitors. You can't stop it because it's not really destroying anything. It's trying to create something new. Creation through chaos, Marcus mused. No wonder the aliens couldn't handle it. They want everything to follow nice, orderly rules. Sarah looked at the swirling chaos visible through their quantum-shielded viewport. So we don't try to stop it. We give it somewhere to create. The plan they developed would have been considered insane by any other species. They would guide the shatter wave to an uninhabited system, using their ship's modified drive to create a quantum resonance that would draw the wave's creative force into a controlled space. You intend to do what? The Alien Council demanded when they transmitted their plan. We're going to give chaos a canvas, Sarah explained, a safe space to create something new. The mathematical probability of success is irrelevant, Marcus interrupted. Humans have a long history of beating the odds. The execution of their plan was part science, part art, and part pure human audacity. The impossible danced through the quantum storm, its crew working in perfect harmony with the chaos around them. They didn't fight the impossible physics. They embraced it, guided it, turned its creative force into something new. The aliens watched in astonishment as the humans deliberately flew into conditions that their scientists had deemed unsurvivable. The Void Dancers moved through broken physics like it was their natural environment, turning what should have been certain death into a symphony of survival. When it was over, the shatter wave had been transformed. Instead of a destructive force consuming systems, it had been guided into creating something entirely new, a stable quantum anomaly that would take scientists centuries to fully understand. As the impossible emerged from the transformed wave, the Alien Council was unusually quiet. Finally, the chief coordinator spoke. We must revise our understanding of your species yet again. You do not merely survive the impossible. You reshape it. That's what humans do. Sarah replied, "We see problems as opportunities. We turn obstacles into stepping stones. We dance with the void until it becomes our partner." The Council's final report on the incident would become legendary in human space. Species Human demonstrates unprecedented ability to function in fundamentally broken physics. They do not merely adapt to impossible conditions, they actively work with them to create new possibilities. Most concerning of all, they appear to enjoy doing so. They still don't get it, do they? Marcus said as they headed home. They think we're terrifying because we can survive anything. But that's not it at all. Sarah nodded, watching the quantum anomaly they'd created shimmer in their wake like a newborn star. What terrifies them is that we don't just survive. We thrive. We create. We turn the impossible into the everyday. And we do it not because we have to, but because we want to. As the impossible approached Earth, its crew tired but triumphant, they had proved something fundamental about humanity. In a universe that operated on fixed rules and predictable patterns, humans were the wild card. The species that looked at the impossible and saw opportunity, that treated physical laws as suggestions, that danced with chaos until it became creation. They had scared the stars not with weapons or technology, but with something far more fundamental: their refusal to accept limitations, their ability to adapt to anything, and their inexplicable joy in doing what every other species considered impossible. The aliens had started watching humanity because they were afraid of what humans might do. Now they were afraid of something far more profound: what humans might become. Because in all their calculations and classifications, they had never considered a species that didn't just face the impossible. They had never imagined a species that would dance with it.